Hello again, YouTube. Today I wanted to talk about a really important topic that I think covers. This is not. This is a lot more important for like the general population. I think. Something that I had to overcome a long time ago, and I think has really affected a lot of people who are getting better. And that is focusing too hard on results as being accurate measurements of their improvement path. So what I mean by that, I think a lot of people often catch themselves losing, and they think that all of the work they put in the recent times are like, I was grinding all week for this tournament and I lost, or I was working really hard in this matchup and I lost, or I switched characters and I won this friendly session against someone that I normally lose to. So this must be an indicator that I'm bad with this character and I should pick this character instead. People often catch themselves, they'll like use other characters and they'll get like a better result in a friendly session that they normally wouldn't do as well. And they attribute that to being like, oh, like this is clearly an indication that I should switch to this character and I should abandon all the effort that I put into the last character was obviously wasted and I should just switch to this character instead. And all of those are basically like, they're misleading, like, or they're not like straight up wrong, like they're like basically wrong. So Melee is like, it's misleading to use these results to really change a lot of things about your overall process with improving in the game. The simple way to describe all this is that Melee is just very complicated. And oftentimes in one individual set of Melee, there are dozens and dozens of interactions, or not even a set necessarily, but like in a matchup, there are actually hundreds of different options that happen depending on the percent, stage, positioning, stock counts, play styles, mood. There's a lot of different things that just happen in a set or in a matchup that make it really complicated and make the process of like getting better in them really hard to interpret correctly. And so when you lose a set, usually that's the consequence of dozens of interactions that have happened. And, you may not know every single one of them. And also within the context of like in Melee, it's just difficult to move your character around. Like that is a part of the skill of the game, is being able to successfully move your character in a way. And also with that character under like with good movement and good execution, to translate that into actually utilizing that character in a strategy against a different character with a specific set of options, and to play around also the freedom your opponent has to do lots of things with their character. Basically, because of how complex any individual set of Melee can be, just not by like, oh, it's difficult necessarily, but literally as in there are so many different things that happen, results often are not a clear indication of what you need to work on or of what you've improved in. The reason why that's important to differentiate is specifically because people will get caught in this idea that, oh, I put in effort, I worked really hard, and I lost, so I failed. And all of these things that I worked on were for naught. Melee is not a game where you do something, like you study, and then like you just memorize and you do it in a tournament, It's a skill that gets developed in a lot larger of a time span. Because let's just pick a situation like when you're playing against Falco as Fox. Let's consider the spacing about the distance of Fox's short hop nair full drift forward. That distance as Fox, you want to be able to dash back out of laser, so that like if Falco does laser instant down air, you'll be able to avoid the down air and grab him and do a combo. Falco can do laser approaching laser to hard read you dashing back, and sometimes you need to do laser approaching nair to beat them overshoot lasering, or take laser full hop in place to avoid the approaching laser. And this situation is very complex, and that doesn't even really scratch the surface. There are so many different things that Fox and Falco can do in that spot. But if you studied this situation, even if you spent an entire week only studying that situation, it's not going to be implemented across, like, you're not going to get it every single time. It's a hard situation. It's a mix up, and the ability to recognize that positioning and to execute well takes a lot of experience and a lot of time. And oftentimes people will try to improve at a lot of different things at once, and they won't quite get the mastery of every single one of those things. And also, guess what? In that same exact situation, the Falco player you're playing against might do some weird thing that their friend taught them to do. They might do laser instant double jump down air. And that's like some weird, it's pretty good if you full hop in place, though, like it catches you, but like that's a weird option that not everyone does. And a lot of time you'll get thrown off by it, and you may not be prepared for like, even if you don't get opened up off that down air, I like to describe melee as some of those situations as like you're off your posture. You posture for a lot of situations to happen. And when some weird stuff happens, it's really easy to lose. Like your hand positioning may literally be in the wrong position for the situation. If you, let's say you are DIing for, I don't know, like you're just DIing like up on something, and suddenly you're on the ledge. You're now holding up while holding the ledge, and imagine trying to ledge dash when your like positioning is like, or maybe you're in a claw positioning when you're not normally in a claw position, and you're on the ledge and you're stuck here, and now you have to like have the awareness to like, oh, I grabbed the ledge and my position is like this, so now I have to go back to my ledge dashing positioning. Then I actually have to do the ledge dash and play the situation. Like that's way too difficult to do. And a lot of the times when in melee, if someone throws you off your posture, you're gonna play the next situation pretty poorly. So even if you do study these specific situations, you may be thrown off by someone being in a weird play style. And guess what? Even if you do understand that one situation, there are still a dozen other situations on a dozen different, or not dozen, 5 different stages, 6-ish, right? 6 stages or so, however many stages there are. I'm blanking right now. In a bunch of different matchups. You may have just like been in a bad mood that day. You may have heard bad news, or you got sick and you're recovering still, or maybe you are hungry. There are so many different things to account for as a competitor that a lot of the time you can't really use that specific like to feel like the work you're putting in is like negated by the result. Because a lot of the time, what is more important is your success in the individual situations that you've studied. So, for example, let's say you did study the Fox versus Falco situation that I described, and every single time it came up, you won it against this player. And let's just say that they happen to know everything else better than you, like just by like coincidence of like them having more experience. Maybe you play in a play style that's very comfortable for them because of their practice partner. They just by coincidence might be good against you, but you may be stronger in that specific situation because you put more work in there, and maybe it wasn't just a week you studied. Maybe you've been studying that for months, because it takes months to really understand that situation, to take everything into account. And you know what? I'll even say that in that situation, you won most of the time, but your opponent did sometimes win the mix-up because it's just a mix-up at the end of the day, and sometimes they're just going to win it because it's a guess. Or maybe sometimes they'll do some weird option that you're not used to doing. Maybe you've seen it a couple of times, but you're just not used to doing it because like it's just complicated. And maybe within that weird option, they have a mixed up. Like let's use the double jump example. If Falco does instant double jump, he has the choice between fast fall down air and no fast fall down air, or going to the top platform. And maybe you just guess wrong. Maybe you try to hard read him doing a no fast fall down air, but then he wave landed on the top platform, wave dash down, and then dropped down immediately, and he whiff punished your up tilt. That could just happen because, that's just a complicated situation that you're probably not prepared for. So melee is just comprised of all of these really, 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 really complicated or not butterfly effects, more like. It's a butterfly effect of all these different situations. And in melee, a result is just comprised of so many of those things. And granted, there are some situations that you can improve in that'll drastically affect your results, such as like getting better at L canceling will make your results jump very, 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 very quickly. That laser situation I described, honestly, that's a pretty important situation. If you're playing that situation as Fox and the Falco player is not as good in that situation as you, you're probably going to make a very big difference in your Falco matchups and your Falco game plan. And your results against Falco will probably improve by a lot just by that one thing changing. But you have to improve in everything in melee kind of in that way, like in that slower, like having to focus, having to sit down and like really understand that situation. And it's just very complicated. And a lot of the time, people are still stuck in the phase that they just need to get better at executing their, like, at moving the character around. So it's hard to move your character around while also trying to do all of those other neutral things at the same time, because it's just complicated to do both. That's the point. It would be a lot more boring if we just kind of like wrote down our options against each other. It's interesting because it's complicated how you get to all of these different things and all these different strategies or whatever. It takes a very skilled player to be able to execute and to also do the thing. And oftentimes when you're learning the execution still, you will be lost and you will not be able to feel the results of you improving your execution. Sometimes you will. Honestly, improving your execution does usually give you pretty giant like results spikes, but a lot of the time you will still struggle in areas that you struggle with, even if you improve in other areas. Like, I kind of like to describe melee improvement as traffic. There are some things that make it feel like you're making progress quicker. If 5 people in front of you leave all at once, you will feel like you made a lot of progress, right? But at the end of the day, it's still a long traffic line. And what ends up happening, I think, to a lot of people is they improve in something and they remove like 5 people up front. But it takes a really, really long time for you to feel the effects of that, because you still have to get through all of these other people first. And it feels like there's so many people in front of you that removing a few people up front doesn't really feel like a big impact. And sometimes you feel it. Sometimes you remove 20 people and you really do feel that impact, even though there are so many people in front of you. But at the end of the day, it's still just traffic, and you still need to you have to get through all of those things, and it's complicated to get through all of those things, and it's important to not lose sight of that. It feels like because you have to wait so long, you're sitting there, you're waiting, you want it to be done, that that you're not making progress. But a lot of the time you are making progress. It's incremental, and everything that you focus on, every new concept you study is benefiting you. And if you pay too much attention to what's directly in front of you, the result, and like you losing, then you may lose sight of like what's actually, where you're actually improving. In that set that I described, the falco or the fox player being really good in that specific situation is going to be way, way, way more, like, they should be really happy that that's something that they've studied and they're able to do now. And that, in the future, that's going to win them way more sets than whatever strategy would have worked to beat that falco player in that moment, because losing or winning does not change your skill level. If I win a set, that doesn't make me a better player inherently. I don't gain anything by winning as a player. Of course I gain as, a person. Like I like winning. Winning feels good. But it doesn't mean anything for your progress. If I lose, I don't become worse inherently. And of course, losing may affect your results in some way. Let's say you lost in winner's bracket, you're very sad, and then you have to play the loser set immediately. That loss is probably going to affect you a little bit. It's going to like shake you up, and you might play differently because of that, and that may affect your results, but it won't affect you as a player. You don't lose information by that set happening. You may lose motivation sometimes, and that may affect your ability to focus on the game, but you don't actually lose a thing. Like, there's no resource that gets lost by losing. It's just like this abstract idea of failure that occurs. But you as a player, like, you don't change. And it's important to remember those things because it makes it easier to let go and focus on the things that you succeeded in. And granted, I should have said this earlier. This is not to say that it's like, oh, you shouldn't care about winning or losing. Winning or losing still feels good and feels bad. That stuff doesn't go away, And I also wanted to point out, this was supposed to be the first thing I brought up. This is not to dog on people who focus on recreational results. If you like tier lists and rankings and stuff, like, that's fine. Like, that's just like, that's all recreational stuff. If you like that stuff, great. Like, that's cool. This is strictly talking about as a player, what you need, like what you should focus on with results as a player trying to get better. As a player trying to get better, you don't really need to put too much weight into the results. You need to pay attention to the results of individual situations, right? And use that information to get better so that your results as a whole will get better. You need to focus on the ways to succeed, not on success, if that makes sense. Because once you focus on the individual results of situations, then you're going to actually be able to use the losses as beneficial information. And I do think that results are a generalized map of, hey, you're losing. There is probably something wrong here. it's like the check engine light. That's what losing kind of is. It's like just like look at it, and there you will find your answers. It's not that like, oh, I lost, therefore I need to give up or I need to like stop playing this character. It's probably just more like, all right, like let's just look at the specific thing you need to do better. Okay, go to the next set. You lost the next set. Let's check the thing that you lost last time or that made you lose last time. Okay, looks like you did better in this area. Now this is the next area to focus on. And you kind of just keep progressing that way slowly. You just keep clearing out. It's like clearing out bugs in a program or something. I don't know how programming works. I just know of this idea. We need to like go one by one and fix every individual issue. And what you need to always be looking at, what is the thing that I've been working on recently? Specifically, what is a specific thing I've been working on recently? And how did I do in the tournament set in that specific thing? If you succeeded at the thing you were working on, good. If you didn't succeed, work on it more. It takes a long time. Like, honestly, to really understand a situation and to implement it in your general game when in situations with high emotion and high stress, you probably need like 3 to 6 months to really understand the situation enough to be able to do it in the moment. So like, don't beat yourself up if like recently you've been working really hard at a specific thing and it's not working, because it just takes time. And like, if you think about the context of like years of play, like maybe you've been playing for like, let's say 3 to 5 years and you still haven't felt like you've improved, a lot of time that might just mean you're a little bit directionless in your improvement. Maybe you do need to focus in a little bit more on specific things, not just like play the game in general. But honestly, you probably are improving in a lot of small areas, but you don't see it because you don't pay attention to the small things. You just see the generalized results of things. So maybe you did work on ledge dashing or work on like platform movement for a week, and then you lost the tournament and you felt like you didn't improve because it's like, oh, it didn't matter. I worked on my platform movement, but it didn't do anything. Well, maybe you need to like be more specific, or maybe you need to work on a different thing. A lot of time it's about finding a specific issue and working on it. That's what results are good for, is they are a clear indication, or they are a clear indication of specific situations and the results and how well you perform in those specific situations. And guess what? When you tackle a lot of the bigger problems one by one, week by week, over time, you're going to feel that progress, but it's going to take time. It's not going to be, oh, I worked on my mentality and I worked on my ledge dashing and now I can place top 3 in my locals. Like you're probably going to need to spend a long time getting 13th and 25th and 33rd and 49th and 65th, I think it's 65th. You need to do so many, like you're going to spend a long time doing that process of finding things one by one, working on them, and then slowly finding your way up and up and up the ladder. And sometimes you may be able to, like I said, you jump traffic a little bit. You get to skip a big portion of the line and you feel like you're getting closer to this idea of getting better. But it takes time, and it's easy to tunnel vision and to feel like you're not making progress when the person and like you're making such incremental progress this whole time. Or maybe you feel like you're not making any progress at all and the line is just not moving. But like I said, a lot of the time it's because you're clearing out the people up front, so that, it's going to take a long time for you to really feel the effects of that. But eventually you will, and it is worth it. Honestly, improving feels really good as long as you know what to look at. It's easy to get lost in results and to feel like you're not making progress, but a lot of the time you are. And it's important to not get lost. And also it's important to not give in to the results if they're too positive. Maybe you feel like you win and you feel like you're making a bunch of progress and you feel great, but you need to make sure you're paying attention to what's actually happening. Maybe the situation that you've been implementing hasn't been going well in the games and you happen to be better in all of these other areas that you're already confident in. Maybe that's a sign that like you do. And the reason why it's important to pay attention to those things is because sometimes it might sneak up on you that you eventually do start losing, and now you don't know why because you weren't focusing on like what's been happening in those specific situations. So just be aware of individual situations and the individual factors that make up a whole game of Melee and a whole result, because a lot of the time you do need to be specific, because if you're not specific, then you will be misled. So yeah, I think that is everything that I had to talk about today with results. So if you resonated, liked, or generally just, had a comment about the situation, feel free to like, subscribe, and let me know what you thought about the video. And let me know if you want to hear more, because I have a bunch of these rambles in the back of my head that I'd be more than happy to share with you. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.